Welcome to this virtual episode of Texas Public Radio's storytelling series, Worth Repeating, Love in the Time of Corona, made possible by the 80/20 Foundation, Hayward Gaudet Fine Portraits, and Mind Science. I'm your host, Kim Johnson. What a year it's been. Each month seemed to last twice as long, and somehow still time flew by. But what happened to love in a pandemic? What happened to our relationships and our close friendships amid the COVID-19 crisis? Tonight's episode showcases some of the ways that people did experience love in the time of Corona, the ups, the downs, the butterflies, and the breakups. Join me in listening to these stories worth repeating. In 2019, the impossible happened. Sasha Nelson was pregnant. Due date, March 2020. Amid the pandemic, she brought new life and love into the world, despite the impossible and the unthinkable.
I found out I was pregnant in July of 2019. My husband and I were thrilled and shocked at the same time. We thought I would need IVF after dealing with infertility for a long time, and it was this impossible thing, but suddenly it was all happening, so we were very happy and excited for that. And the months that went by, we were trying to get ready as we could be anyway. By the last month of my pregnancy, what should have been the home stretch was only the beginning of something else, because that was the month that the coronavirus pandemic really hit in March of 2020 when I was 9 months pregnant. It started out as this faraway thing that we could maybe laugh about, and suddenly, no, it was more of a real concern, and it was local, and it was not contained. It was spreading, and the numbers were going up, and panic shopping was becoming a thing. Toilet paper shortages and all these other products were missing and hard to come by. And I didn't want to be a part of the panic shopping, but inevitably I had to go shopping and get my last grocery trip run before I had the baby. And so there we were, my husband and I, at 5 a.m. at H-E-B just to get some baby items 2 days before my due date. And so I'm ready to pop, wobbling around H-E-B, and I just had this moment where I had to stop, and I just started crying and bawling my eyes out, because I think it was just the stress and feelings of being overwhelmed with everything that just got to me, with pregnancy in one hand and then the pandemic in another. It was just very heavy on me. But I kept it together, because 2 days later was my due date, and I was there to get induced, and that was the day my baby was born. Several hours later anyway, but yeah, and I'm glad I chose to get induced, because my husband was able to be there with me and support me. I did not know if I waited any longer if he would be able to be there or not, since with the pandemic rising and the hospital kept changing their policies more strict by the week as to who could be there with you or not. So he was there, and we were able to really just enjoy for a time just our newborn baby, and it was a wonderful time, despite the fact that there was this thing going on in the outside world, and very close to me, because I could see it from my window. At the ER down below was a tent being set up, and people were walking up with COVID symptoms, and I could see this, I could observe while I had my newborn son in my arms. And it was just a very surreal experience. And it has been this whole time to be a new parent in the time of the pandemic. I have been put on parenting. This is parenting on hard mode, I would say. And I think that's just parenting in a nutshell is a lesson I've learned, that you really just roll with the punches and you learn to adapt and become resilient and power through. I powered through my pregnancy, and I did it through that C-section, and I'm doing it now as a new mom. This is the year so many people, like I've heard, would say, you throw the whole year away. 2020 is trash, but it's been a silver lining kind of year for me, since this is the year that my baby was born. And so I'll look back on this as like very tough yet beautiful kind of time.
The loneliness of isolation during the early months of the COVID-19 crisis were hard for everyone, including Gregory Valdez, who ended a relationship and found a different kind of love in the aftermath.
I'm going to start with this quote and I'm going to end with this quote. The meaning of life is not to surround yourself with the people you love, the things you love. The meaning of life is found when you surround yourself with the people who love you. You know who said that? Iggy Pop. And I love it. And spoiler alert, this is not a love story. It's about what Iggy said. My name is Gregory Valdez. I'm 29. I'm a Virgo, whatever that means. I'm a content strategist and writer for an ad agency in San Antonio. I'm bisexual and I'm a recovered addict. I think those are the things you need to know today to dimensionalize me a little bit more. Funny enough, I was a worth repeating speaker 2 years ago, and yeah, that might have had something to do with the relationship too. Anyways, here we are. So, pandemic, relationships, love life. We got to go back 7 months. And 7 months ago, I was living in San Antonio with Bruce, my cat, in a 2-story loft. I had a beautiful boyfriend here in Houston. And I was sitting in a conference in Scottsdale, Arizona, listening to a speaker scoff at how worried we should be about this pandemic. Go figure. As soon as I got back from that conference, I went into quarantine and didn't see anybody in person that I knew for a month and a half. I was FaceTiming everyone, Zooming everyone. I got an iPad just to really be able to see my boyfriend better and feel this more screens, more windows, more viewpoints so that we can break this barrier of distance and not being able to touch each other. I was doing it more than ever with everyone that I could, but it started to sneak up on me. Started to become too much. It felt like I was sitting on a deserted island with all the amenities I really needed and wanted. Internet, video game, just work 8 hours a day and you could do whatever you want. All right, sweet. But then that loneliness got me. And I've experienced loneliness before. And I've dealt with my loneliness in different ways. And there are ways that I swore and have tried to never deal with my loneliness again. So I started to snap. And I called my boyfriend and I asked him if it would be so crazy if I drove to Houston, got out of my car, and just even for an hour to stand across or sit across you in the driveway. Wouldn't that be worth it? Is that so crazy? He nodded yes. And it got to me. And it broke me. And I got upset. And I reacted and I overreacted. And I just thought, why? I selfishly thought, wouldn't you go to the ends of the earth for whoever you loved, no matter what? And what did I do? I took up an invitation to take a road trip to Missouri to work remotely from there for a week. And I didn't tell my boyfriend and I didn't tell my family. And I escaped. I selfishly and quietly, I even ditched Bruce with a babysitter, went to Missouri. I broke up with my boyfriend while I was there, and when I got back, I realized I had made the biggest mistake of my life. And I spent another month in quarantine, and the loneliness got deeper until my parents said, come for Mother's Day, spend a week with us. I never went back to San Antonio. I'm recording this from my childhood bedroom with a desk right there where I work every day. As a recovered addict, it also felt like I was coming home to recover too. Even though that's not what I was doing. But they caught me, and they accepted me, and they took me in again. And my cousins and my aunts and my uncles and everybody came back, and I rediscovered family. And I'm still sort of broken from the relationship in a way. But I've got something I didn't have before, okay? It's family. The meaning of life is to surround yourself with the people who love you. And for that, I'm thankful. And for that, I'm thankful that the pandemic happened. No, this was not a love story, but I promise you, I've got something I didn't have before, and I have love in a new way that I didn't have before. And I know that if I can keep loving like this for the rest of my life, I can be happy. I think that's it. Thank you. I love you. Stay safe out there.
Living through a pandemic can show you a lot of different kinds of love, not just romantic. Jennifer Shocker, known as Birdie, is a hospital chaplain and a nurse. When her church experienced a COVID outbreak, she saw a different side of her community and of social media than she ever had before.
Hi, my name is Birdie Shocker. I serve as a church communicator, a hospital chaplain, and I am a registered nurse. And our church thought it was doing everything possible that we all know to do to mitigate the risk of COVID-19. As a matter of fact, our doors weren't even open. We were broadcasting on Sunday with a limited amount of staff. So when I got the word that one of our team had contracted COVID-19 and we had been exposed, I was concerned for that person, but not so much for the rest of us because we had been doing everything we were supposed to do. Contacted Metro Health and communicated everything people needed to do to protect themselves in the community. And I thought that would basically be the end of it, but it wasn't. The next day I woke up and I had a little tickle down the back of my throat. And I checked my temperature and I had a fever. I went to the doctor. They had told me I had strep throat and they weren't too concerned, but they'd take a COVID test because I had been exposed out of an abundance of precaution. And about 3 days later, they called me and they told me I had COVID-19. Now, knowing what I know, knowing I had strep, knowing I had other health conditions, I blurted into the phone, that's really scary. Because these are things we know that can be potential comorbidities or things that can lead to a person's demise. And the truly frightening thing was the person on the other end did not disagree with me. So out of this sprang a journey of love. I took some time to be still and quiet after I got this news and thought to myself, what could I do that would be a positive impact in a time where I would be isolated and sick? And the answer was I couldn't do a whole lot, but I could live authentically and transparently. And so I set an intention to do just that. And what evolved out of that was a journey on social media, on Facebook. I posted that I had COVID-19, and at first it was out of necessity. I, of course, called all my contacts from the past couple of weeks, and told them to quarantine, but I was not certain I had reached everyone. And my Facebook friends, when they saw this post, did not disappoint. There was a huge outpouring of love and support and the desire to hear more out of care and concern. And for some people, it was because I was the first person they knew with COVID-19. And there was a lot of conflicting information out there that they were confused about. And so since I had set this intention, this journey began. My Facebook friends were so loving and so caring, and we had some interesting conversations at times. I mean, a lot of times I was so sick, all I could post was a thumbs up emoji. And other times I was feeling so lonely and so vulnerable and so scared, yet I posted things that I did in the middle of the night, even prayers I had composed. The support was never ending, and when I was having a hard night, it just filled my heart with joy to be able to read everybody's posts. One of the things that kind of evolved was this loving discourse about things to say to people who are suffering. Because I had set this intention to be authentic and transparent, I didn't mind pointing out to people really gently when they said things that weren't particularly comforting. Like, the God of my understanding does not send illness to someone to teach them a lesson. And other things that people said, and more than one person said this, was, oh, it's okay. You know what? You're going to get COVID-19 and so is everybody else. And at least you have some temporary immunity. Now, number one, I pointed out gently, we don't know if all of that is true. And number two, no, that doesn't comfort me. And it is so difficult to know what to say to someone who is suffering. What's really important is to listen and validate their experience and express love and support. I couldn't be more grateful to my Facebook friends. I'm continuing to recover. It has been weeks, and they still support me. This outpouring of encouragement and faith and love really bolstered my faith to a great extent, because what I see my Facebook friends doing when they post these encouraging things is acting as extensions and expressions of the divine. And so I wanted to take all of this love that these people were expressing for me and spread it all around and share it with you. And this is why I tell you my story, because this was truly love in the time of coronavirus. And I thank you so much for listening.
When quarantine forced couples into close proximity for weeks on end, relationships inevitably ended. Our next storyteller, Mariana Salazar, had a different experience, though. The pandemic revived a relationship she thought was over.
The pandemic has had quite an effect on many romantic relationships. However, it has had me on an emotional roller coaster, thankfully with a very happy ending. When March came, COVID-19 happened, and along with COVID-19 came my ex. He would slide in my DMs and he would be like, I have an extra hand sanitizer, I have an extra Lysol. That was so funny, and of course I fell for it. And there I went getting hand sanitizers. And unlike most relationships, we thrived at the beginning of the pandemic because our relationship had issues outside of home. So it was when we were out, when we were doing activities, that the problems happened. But if we were stuck at home, we got along just fine. Things started opening up and other things opened up. And with that came the end of my relationship with my ex. At that point, I told myself I'm going to make a conscious effort to not go back to this, to not be in this cycle of going back and forth all the time. And so I did something I never thought I would do. I got on a dating app. I was on Hinge, and I had it in my head that I could find the perfect guy. So I was like, I had a doctor, dark hair, colored eyes, and I found one. And we, messaged back and forth, and we went on a date, and it was awful. When I mean awful, I mean just, he was rude, disrespectful, put whole milk in his coffee. Who still drinks whole milk? He did. And I ended up blocking him, and I never saw him again. However, I did keep the app. And I will admit it, I did it because it was flattering to get likes every morning and stuff like that. But there was one guy that was so different from everyone else that I have ever dated. And he just really caught my attention because I think he told me something like, have you ever frozen your gummy worms? No, I didn't know people did that. And so we're messaging back and forth, and we decided to meet up for a glass of wine, which ended up being a bottle of wine. And it was so cute. From the start, he stuttered a little bit. He was playing with his fingers, and it was so charming. And he just knew so much about so many things. And I found myself completely just having word vomit because I wanted to stay on the date longer. And 3 hours passed, and I was like, this guy is so different. And I got home, and I was like, I wonder if he's gonna text me. And he texted me, and I was like, I had so much fun, whatever. And so we go on a second date. And on the second date, he decides to tell me that he hates bananas. And at that moment, I was like, oh my God, I hate bananas too. I hate the way they smell. And he's like, oh, I hate the way they taste. I hate the texture. I hate this. And I know this is weird, but hearing that, I was like, the stars are aligning for me. I found my forever guy because I have never met anyone that hates bananas with such a passion, the same way that I do. And since that day, I have not left his side, and he has proven me wrong with everything I thought of men. So he is kind, he is loyal, he made me his girlfriend, he didn't waste time in anything, he gets me flowers. And it's weird, I never thought that in the middle of a pandemic I would have such a beautiful, perfect love story. And I do. And what the lesson in this would be to really get out of your comfort zone. Stop, I stopped looking for guys where I always looked for them. And I said, you know what, I'm going to give a dating app a chance. And I am going to go on a date with someone who's completely the opposite of me. And I am so happy that I did it because everywhere I go, everyone tells me you're so happy and you light up a room. And it's really because Jay's a 10 out of 10. He has had me amazed with what a good person he is. And I never thought this would happen to me, but it did. And it has been great. And I'm very, very excited to see what the future holds for me.
Thank you for joining us for this special virtual edition of Texas Public Radio's Worth Repeating storytelling series, Love in the Time of Corona, made possible by the 80/20 Foundation, Mind Science, and Hayward G'day Fine Portraits. You can find more information about Texas Public Radio and Worth Repeating online at tpr.org. Until next time, I'm Kim Johnson. Stay safe, San Antonio.